Hello and welcome to day 11 of the 12 days, the PlanesTV's 12 days of Christmas. Just 2 more shows to go, so if you've been along with me for this ride from Christmas Day right the way through to tomorrow, 5th of Jan, we've been airing each evening at 7 PM UK time a programme from our back catalogue of shows, and I hope you've been enjoying them. It's been fun to go through the archive and pick out some of my favourites, both from the recent history, recent past. So we've done British Air Shows 2018, which was the RF 100 year. We did Avro Sisters when we saw 2 Lancasters on the UK Airshow circuit. We've also dipped into the archive to the 90s, so Shuttleworth year 1996 was a bit of a gem from my point of view. But this one is really special. Mildenhall Air Fete is one of those air shows that if you attended, has lasted long in the memory. Not least for the burgers. We always talk about it, the burgers, the hot dogs. It's just something about the food at those American shows, particularly at Mildenhall. And these shows were really special. Very long flying displays, fantastic participation from obviously the USAF, the RAF, but also internationally. I won't try and preempt what is going to be a pretty action-packed programme. You'll get a gist, and I'll leave in the description some of the aircraft that you'll see. But yeah, just sit back and enjoy a bit of aviation action to take us away from the winter chill. And we've got one more show tomorrow, which is the Russian Air Force 100th Anniversary Air Show at Zukovsky. A pretty remarkable show to end on tomorrow. And if you'd like to see that and be reminded about any future streams like this, or live premieres like this, and streams actually, do make sure to like the Facebook page, subscribe to us on YouTube, and of course the email newsletter is always a very good way of keeping in touch. But without further ado, let's watch the best of Mildenhall Air Fete.
Fat burgers and hot dogs, best on base.
Ice
Come on in
soda, beer, right here. Don't need to go any further. Best burgers on base, right here.
Fat burgers and beer.
Aviation Action has been enjoying the flavour and recording the action at Mildenhall's Air Fete with professional standard cameras since 1989. But the event is 21 years old now, and there must be a wealth of early video and film material to be discovered. A case in point is the Lockheed SR-71, which made several dramatic appearances in the 80s. It last flew in 1988, but as the undoubted star of that era, we had to include it here, despite the amateur quality. The type was retired after 1989, but a handful have been reactivated, so there's just a chance we could see this awesome spy plane at Air Fete again. The Air Fete is held every year on the Saturday and Sunday of the spring bank holiday. RAF Mildenhall is the headquarters of the US 3rd Air Force, and the event always features strong US participation. It's a truly international event, and 13 air forces contribute to the action in this video, but US types dominate. In particular the heavies, for which Mildenhall is so famous. We keep the narration short so that you can enjoy the location sound, much of which is in hi-fi stereo. Here's a taste of the action coming up.
It's the largest air fete or air show, military air show in the world, and certainly the largest in NATO. It is NATO's premier show. We have about 300,000 people a year in 2 days. which literally blows everybody else away in terms of numbers. And I think it's important to keep in mind that it's a purely military show. We have 7.5 hours of flying each day and the static display, and we have no commercialism. There is none. You know, why do we do Air Fete every year? I think we do it because the taxpayers in the NATO supporting nations need to see where their money goes. We do that well. We show them the force structure, we show them the crews, we show them how we do their jobs. We're excited about that opportunity. That's why we do it.
The airfield's origins lie with the RAF. It's on lease to the USAF, so we'll begin with some of the more interesting RAF contribution in recent years. The Red Arrows are the most regular participants in the Air Fete, and, as the RAF's premier aerobatic team, they deserve more than the minute or so we devote here. This display is from the 1994 show, the year in which the Arrows celebrated their 30th anniversary. They've been flying the British Aerospace Hawk since 1980, and their many appearances worldwide have probably helped the Hawk achieve its international bestseller status. We go back to 1989 to see the largest tactical assault on public display for 30 years. Mounted with the help of units of the RAF regiment. First on the scene are Anglo-French Jaguars, tasked with photo reconnaissance of the enemy position. They identify a SAM missile radar site, and Tornado GR1s are called in to take it out. With the missile threat significantly reduced, more Jaguars strike at enemy positions with bombs and rockets. The Hercules is the RAF's, and for that matter, the world's military workhorse. They've served the RAF since 1967, and in addition to military activities, have done valuable humanitarian work in Ethiopia, northern Iraq, Bosnia, and Rwanda. Here, two examples of the Lynham-based Fat Albert deliver Scorpion light tanks and RAF regiment troops to the battlefield. The RAF's rotary wing heavyweight is the Boeing Chinook. It proved its worth in the Falklands when a single survivor from 5 dispatched achieved an astonishing utilization rate. Reinforcements arrive courtesy of an Aerospatiale Puma and demonstrate the technique of abseiling. Ground forces can call on the RAF for close support, and the aircraft best suited to the role is the VSTOL BAE Harrier. A second Puma delivers further troops in a more conventional way. Even so, the hover jump technique can still involve a fall, fully loaded from 12 to 15 feet. With the enemy suitably overwhelmed, just time to reflect that the Air Fete was particularly privileged to witness such an impressive demonstration of the RAF's capabilities. In 1990, the 50th anniversary of the Battle of Britain, it was appropriate for the first public demonstration of the RAF's mixed fighter force concept. The RAF's frontline interceptor is, of course, the F-3 version of the Panavia Tornado. The Hawk is designated a second-line fighter in RAF service, for which it can carry Sidewinder missiles and a centerline gun pod. Central to the RAF's air defense capability is the tanker force. The Handley Page Victor was, in 1990, approaching the end of a distinguished operational service. This Boeing E-3 Sentry, often referred to as AWACS, is operated by NATO for airborne early warning and control. Once again, the Air Fete was privileged to see a rare combination of aircraft types in an impressive roll demonstration. The Avro Shackleton, like the Victor, had every hour of airframe life eked out of it as it awaited replacement by the E-3 Sentry. This is 1991, and in just a few weeks, the Griffins will fall silent. The Avro Vulcan, an airshow favourite, made its last ever appearance at Air Fete in 1992. Retired from RAF service in 1984, a lone airframe XH 558 was maintained and flown by a dedicated crew. Now in private hands, its systems are being kept operational, so there's a chance we could see it in the air again. Yet another retirement was imminent in 1992. The RAF would say goodbye to its Phantoms later that year. This from 74 Squadron based at RAF Wattisham. One of the most successful jet fighter aircraft in recent times. A staggering 5,174 were built, and large numbers are still in use around the world. It was originally designed to meet a US Navy requirement, but subsequently adopted by land forces. Many of the RAF's aircraft were transferred from the Fleet Air Arm when they retired their last big carrier, the previous HMS Ark Royal. Phantom is, of course, an American aircraft, and we look now at other American-built types. First, some that are in service with other air forces. The Northrop F-5 Tiger II was developed from the F-5 Freedom Fighter of the 1960s. A light, inexpensive fighter intended for export as part of the military assistance program. 1,500 were built, and the US Air Force ultimately adopted the Tiger II for its aggressor training squadron. The Tiger II has replaced the Hunter in the Swiss Air Force, and the pair displaying here at Air Fete 95 are in the colours of the Patrouille Suisse team. The Lockheed General Dynamics F-16 Fighting Falcon appears regularly at Air Fete. Its relatively low cost, it's small with a single engine, has contributed to its export success, particularly within NATO countries. This from the Royal Netherlands Air Force, where it is built as part of a co-production contract, also involving Belgium, Norway and Denmark. This Belgian F-16 at Air Fete 95 was marked up to represent the 50th anniversary of its base, Kleinbrogel. It is particularly impressive as a dogfighter, where its size and maneuverability make it a hard target to acquire on radar and hit. Fly-by-wire frees the pilot to concentrate on what's going on outside the cockpit and permits display maneuvers like the high alpha pass, which would be difficult in a conventionally controlled aircraft. Another widely sold fighter and attack aircraft of American origin is the F-18 Hornet, this from the Canadian Air Force at Air Fete 94. In Canadian service, it is actually designated the CF-188 and the name Hornet not used. Designed for shipboard use and ordered for US Navy and Marine Corps, the Hornet has become another Navy type adopted by land forces. Australia and Spain use them too. During this high alpha pass, you can clearly see the fake cockpit painted underneath, a measure designed to confuse opponents in dogfights. Staying with the F-18 and also at Air Fete 94, but moving on to US-operated aircraft, this by the US Marine Corps. The US Navy and Marines have received over 400 examples. F-8 92 presented a US Navy F-14 Tomcat flying for the first time in the UK since 1977. The Tomcat was popularized by the film Top Gun, and over 500 examples of this variable geometry fleet defense fighter have been delivered to the US Navy. Most will be upgraded to F-14D standard with new engines and avionics. The F-15C Eagle single-seat air superiority fighter is much larger than the F-16. This display was on the Sunday of F-8 91, and sadly we haven't seen the type in full routine since. It has been developed into a two-seat strike variant. We'll be seeing that shortly. Another aircraft we haven't seen flying at Air Fete recently is the A-10 Thunderbolt. This was also from the 1991 show. The A-10 was especially effective in the Gulf War, and the 1991 event was very much devoted to combatants from that conflict. The static park featured some veteran airframes with proudly displayed mission tallies. The A-10 was specifically designed for battlefield close support. Its 7-barrel nose gun with an astonishing rate of fire can simply pound its way through the thickest armour. 12,000 pounds of external weapons can be carried too. Upper Hayford's F-111Es, withdrawn in 1993, say a noisy goodbye at that year's Air Fete. With the imminent closure of their base, the 20th Tactical Fighter Wing was relocating to the US, and aircraft from the 55th Fighter Squadron give a last demonstration of the Aardvark's swing-wing planform and bombing techniques. . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . Replacing the F-111s is a two-seat strike variant of the F-15, the F-15E Strike Eagle. These are based at nearby Lakenheath, and though their display is restricted to flybys, their appearance is welcome. We've reported several final appearances, but there's always something new at Air Fete. Undoubtedly, the highlight in recent years came in 1992 with the first UK appearance of the Lockheed F-117A, so-called stealth fighter. It is operated by the 37th Fighter Wing, based at Tonopah Test Range, Nevada, USA. This is the aircraft arriving on the Wednesday before the show. It appeared on static display the whole weekend.
This live premiere is part of the PlanesTV 12 Days of Christmas. At 7 PM UK time each evening from Christmas Day through to January 5th, we're airing a full-length programme from our on-demand archive here on YouTube and on Facebook. Make sure to like the PlanesTV Facebook page and subscribe on YouTube. And if you're enjoying what you're seeing, make sure to like the video and give it a share so other people can enjoy it too. And who knows, maybe I'll do more of these in future. Also, make sure to check the description of this video to find out how you can access our on-demand archive anytime. Right now though, let's get back on with the show. I hope you enjoy.
Whilst our brief in this video is modern military metal, Air Fete has often featured historical items. This actual DH-88 Comet departed Mildenhall in 1934 on its record-breaking flight to Australia. Sadly, this Shuttleworth collection aircraft is now grounded at Old Warden. The Battle of Britain Memorial Flight Lancaster has been a welcome visitor on several occasions. Lancasters operated out of Mildenhall in World War II. F-8 92 commemorated the 50th anniversary of the arrival of the US Army Air Force in the UK, and a unique formation of trainers belonging to the PT flight displayed the mounts on which many of the young pilots would have trained. Operation Neptune, the code name for the D-Day landings, was the historical theme for the 1994 show, and two important combatants appeared, resplendent in their D-Day markings. Many would argue that, but for the Spitfire, Britain would have fallen to the Nazis in 1940. It truly was the right aircraft in the right place at the right time. Several Spitfires still fly, and this one is operated by the Historic Aircraft Collection at Duxford. And this is the American equivalent. With its original power plant replaced by the proven Merlin, the P-51 Mustang became a flying legend. great range made it ideal as an escort fighter, and several dozen survive in flying condition. Damn Yankee, with the red and blue checkerboard nose, is owned by the Scandinavian Historic Flight, and the other by Intrepid Aviation. Joined now by the Dutch Spitfire flight's aircraft, itself active during the D-Day period, the four aircraft perform a rare and timely formation flyby tribute to those involved in Operation Neptune. This is an especially rare aircraft, and made the transatlantic crossing for the D-Day commemorations, arriving just a few days before Air Fete 94. This particular aircraft is actually a C-41, the Dakota's immediate predecessor, and was General Hap Arnold's personal transport during the war. General Eisenhower described the Douglas DC-3 Dakota, C-47 in US service, as one of the four weapons that won World War II. Over 11,000 DC-3s were produced, and a testament to their success is the large number that still fly commercially today. This one is the corporate transport of the American Cookie Company, Otis Spunkmeyer. In rather sunnier weather, Air Fete 95 celebrated the anniversary of victory in World War II by bringing together some important warbirds from this period. Each of these aircraft belongs to the fighter collection based at Duxford. Stephen Gray has a dozen or so wartime aircraft, and has easily the largest collection of its type in the UK. Several more aircraft are undergoing restoration to delight us in future years. The Lockheed P-38 Lightning had some bad luck at the show, bursting a tyre on Saturday and losing its canopy on Sunday. Look closely now. Sunday's display was curtailed then. This is Saturday's action. This was Lockheed's first military aircraft, and was unconventional in both layout and armament. The twin booms carried the engines and superchargers, and the nose a devastating punch of 4 machine guns and a cannon. It was a great success in every theatre of World War II, in a variety of roles. This is the only P-38 flying this side of the Atlantic, and appears in the colour of a 20th Fighter Group machine from 1944. Another fighter collection gem. This P-47 Thunderbolt was rebuilt in America from at least 2 airframes. It too is the only one flying in Europe, and wears the markings of an aircraft which flew out of Duxford in 1944. It was a real heavyweight, 4 times that of the Spitfire, and proved successful not only for long-range fighter escort, but also for ground attack. The biggest contribution from the fighter collection is the B-25 Mitchell medium bomber. This one flies in RAF markings, but the type is probably most famous for the daring raid on Tokyo launched from an aircraft carrier. It was popular with crews because its speed and maneuverability made it a hard target at low altitude. In the latter part of the war, this area of East Anglia was dominated by 8th Air Force units, many flying the B-17 Flying Fortress on daylight bombing missions over Europe. Aptly named, progressive variants were given more and more defensive armour as losses grew. Anything up to 13 half-inch machine guns, all at the expense of bomb load. B-17 Preservation Limited operates Sally B as a memorial to the 79,000 US aircrew killed in action in World War II. The Hawker Hurricane served throughout the war, though it will be remembered best for its exploits in the Battle of Britain, where it accounted for more enemy aircraft than all other types put together. This one is especially appropriate at a US base, as it is marked up as an aircraft from Eagle Squadron, in which American volunteers served before the US entered the war. The victory won, we couldn't move on from historical types without looking at one of America's most successful post-war jets, the F-86 Sabre. Strictly speaking, its MiG-15 adversary in the Korean War was technically superior, but better training and operation gave the F-86 a 5-to-1 kill rate. France has always sent a big contingent to Air Fete over the years, and their national aerobatic team, the Patrouille de France, have been regular performers at the show. The Patrouille de France fly 8 Alpha jets, a twin-engined Franco-German design for training and light attack, and recently upgraded in mid-life program. The name, the Patrouille de France, was adopted in 1952, but the French Air Force has operated aerobatic teams since 1931. Their speciality is very close formation flying. F-894 was also treated to some close formation flying by the French Air Force Jaguars from EC-7. French and RAF Jaguars proved especially effective in the Gulf War for ground attack, where its small planform made it a difficult target for ground fire. The Mirage 2000 has an important place in a long line of successful Dassault fighters. Its first ever display in the UK was at F-887, but this is in 1995. This is the 2000C Interceptor, but variants are tasked with nuclear strike, air superiority, maritime warfare and training. The type is currently undergoing a midlife update, but will be largely replaced by the Rafale by the year 2000. The French Navy appeared at Air Fete in force in 1990 and brought with them a Super Frelon. Rarely seen in Britain, yet built in large numbers and widely exported, this version sports a radar and carries torpedoes. France retains 2 conventional aircraft carriers, and the Super Etendard is employed for fleet defense and maritime strike. It proved its capability in Argentinian service in the Falklands when armed with Exocet air-to-surface missiles. Still at Air Fete 90, the Fleet Air Arm of the Royal Navy paralleled the RAF's contributions with a demonstration of fleet defence capabilities. The enemy is represented by Vradu's Hawker Hunters and identified by the airborne early warning Sea King. Sea Harriers equipped with Sidewinder missiles and guns are scrambled to intercept, and the Hunters, as they say, are history. This was the first ever public demonstration. The unusual V-shaped tail identifies this as a French-built Fouga Magister. But this one is operated by the Belgian Air Force. Its special livery marks 35 years operating the type as a trainer. It predated and now survives a jet provost in First World military service. It flies here at Air Fete 95. Large numbers were built for the French Air Force, largely replaced by the Alpha jet. The type's relative lack of sophistication, it doesn't have ejector seats, has contributed to its popularity in private hands after military retirement. Another look at the Alpha jet, also sporting an imaginative colour scheme and also flown by the Belgian Air Force. This is Air Fete 94. An even rarer Belgian offering, from their navy, was an Alouette 3 at the 91 Air Fete. The Royal Netherlands Air Force also fly the highly successful French-built Alouette 3, and their Grasshoppers team give an impressive demonstration. The Carousel is their party piece, performing here at the 94 show. Also from the Netherlands is the Fokker F-27 Troopship. This astonishing display in what is, in reality, a 30-year-old airliner has regularly delighted Air Fete crowds. The F-27s are shortly to be replaced by the C-130, so we may not see them again. Appearing for the first time as an independent air arm and also a member of the Warsaw Pact, the Czech Air Force displayed an L-59 Albatross at Air Fete 93. Developed from the highly successful L-39, of which nearly 3,000 were built, the L-59 is an advanced trainer and attack aircraft. Air Fete welcomed the Frecce Tricolori, Italy's national team in 1995, showing the MB339A Pan for the first time. With the advantage perhaps of flying 10 aircraft, many regard them as the best of the national teams. Certainly many of their maneuvers are unique, so let's just enjoy the action for a couple of minutes or so.
This programme is one of nearly 300 full-length airshow programmes, live broadcasts and special features available on the PlanesTV On Demand service. Head to PlanesTV.com/12 days to get half-price access to PTV On Demand for 6 months. The service includes all programmes PlanesTV has released over the last 10 years and also very many from our early archive which stretches all the way back to 1989. That link again is PlanesTV.com/12 days. You'll even get a 7-day free trial on the service. Now though, let's get back on with the show. Enjoy!
We start with an aircraft type with which Mildenhall is synonymous, the KC-135 Stratotanker. Today, the 100th Air Refuelling Wing is headquartered at Mildenhall, and their aircraft are easily identified by the D symbol on the tail, signifying the wing's history as the 100th Bomb Group. The KC-135 is a development of the pioneering Boeing 707 airliner. It employs the boom system of refueling, which is extended and quite literally flown by a boom operator, in contrast to the drogue system used by the RAF, where the receiver pilot does all the work. Pilot, co-pilot, and navigator make up the other 3 crew members. The 91 Air Fete was the last to be hosted by the 513th Airborne Command Control Wing, and their EC-135H aircraft were destined for transfer. We begin the action with one of their aircraft. To Air Fete 94, and a spirited takeoff by a KC-135R starts the show. The KC-135 would have been designated Boeing 717, thus filling the gap in a series of famous airliner numbers now extending to Boeing 777. Now, more than 30 years on, it is still the cornerstone of US tanking capacity. When the KC-135 replacement specification was issued, it was required that it apply to an already certificated wide body still in production. That meant either the McDonnell Douglas DC-10 or Boeing 747. In the event, the DC-10 won. In sheer numbers, the KC-135 still dominates the fleet, but the KC-10 brings a bonus of a quick change capability to passengers or cargo. Also, the fleet has been modified to take the drogue system and permit 3-point refueling, the main advantage over the boom. Another important role of RAF Mildenhall is logistical support, and a wide variety of transports frequent the base. But first, another tanker. At the 94 show, we saw a rare display by a US Marine Corps KC-130. The Lockheed C-130 Hercules, in use by 30 air forces worldwide, is the stalwart of tactical transport, but the type has been developed to take on numerous other roles, including electronic intelligence, jamming, weather reconnaissance, tactical gunships, and even a bomber. The MC-130H is operated by locally based special forces. But this one at Air Fete 95 is from Hulbert's Field in Florida. They are tasked with covert missions with MH-53 helicopters for infiltration and exfiltration of personnel behind enemy lines. Rescuing downed pilots is an important role too. The C-5 Galaxy is the West's largest military transport, capable of carrying a payload of over £250,000, or £125,000 over 8,000 miles. It's a regular participant, shown here taking off at Air Fete 95. And now at Air Fete 94. It first entered service in 1969, but this, the C-5B version, first appeared in 1982, and production ended in 1989. It can operate from short fields, but this can be expensive on tyres. The C-141 Starlifter is a long-range strategic transport. Nearly 300 were built in the 60s and subsequently stretched and fitted with an airborne refueling capability. It was the USAF's first pure jet strategic freighter, and though its 89,000 pound payload is small compared to the C5 and the C-17, its high speed was especially welcome when first introduced. This example is flying at Air Fete 94. The Lockheed C-17 Globemaster III is the USAF's new strategic transport and made its European debut at Air Fete 94. Taking off here at the press preview a few days before the show. It's based at Charleston, South Carolina, with the 437th Airlift Wing. It doesn't have the payload capability of the C-5, but it can take the bulk of an Abrams tank in its 172,000 pound cargo capacity. The C-17's speciality, though, is performance on the ground, where short-field landing and manoeuvrability on the ground open up many more airfields than would be available to the C-5 and permit strategic supply much closer to the battlefield than would have been possible before. Cargo throughput can be triple that achieved by the other heavies. Air Fete 94 saw an extremely rare appearance by an RC-135U. Note the sensors on the tail, wingtips and forward fuselage. Its surveillance and electronic countermeasure roles are highly classified. Like the KC-135 and RC-135, the Boeing E-3 Sentry is based on the 707 airliner. It carries powerful radar and state-of-the-art computers to detect threats and control fighters, warning them of opposition forces and defense radars. The crew complement is up to 20 depending on the mission, and with in-flight refueling and a rest area with bunks, AWACS can remain on station for long periods. The RAF has recently added 6 to replace their aged Shackletons. The Rockwell International B-1 Lancer made its European flying debut at Air Fete 89. The 1989 performer was a B-1B from the 319th Bomb Wing at Grand Forks Air Force Base, but to Air Fete 91 now, and the last occasion we saw the B-1 in the flying program. A supersonic swing wing, a lone and unafraid low-level long-range penetrator. The B-1B has a crew of 4 and is armed with up to 22 air-launched cruise and radar suppression missiles. It first flew in 1974, but it was 1981 before the politicians gave the go-ahead for anything like quantity production. The aircraft which best exemplifies the might and deterrent of the West's air power is the venerable Boeing B-52 Stratofortress. This awesome nuclear bomber has been in service since 1954 and has appeared regularly at Air Fete. Despite its size, it can maneuver remarkably well, as Captain Randy Rushworth ably demonstrated in Swashbuckler from the 42nd Bombardment Wing in 1990. For a further look at Boeing's 8-engined heavyweight, we move to Air Fete 94. For many years it was thought that Mildenhall's airfield layout was unsuitable for operating B-52s. Air Fete aficionados will be forever thankful for that change of mind.
The carriage could be steered, the crew really making a point.
Hitting the aircraft at something like 45 degrees almost there, as it makes its way down to the eastern air. We thank you very much indeed for coming in such numbers from, as we know, all around the world this weekend. And as the final item in the programme, therefore, we turn to the day B-52H Stratofortress.
Thankfully, the type has never been called upon in an east-west conflict, but its 108,000-pound conventional bomb capacity was used to devastating effect in Vietnam and the Gulf War. Nevertheless, it remains, after 41 years frontline service, an important part of the USAF inventory, and the USAF in turn, as part of NATO, is the cornerstone of the West's defence. The B-52 may well have been supplanted by more modern technology, but it was frontline during the darkest times of the Cold War. We may never know the debt we owe to the B-52 and aircraft supporting it, as an uncertain world plunged into the nuclear age.
I really hope you've enjoyed this show from the PlanesTV archive. As I've said a couple of times, it's from our on-demand service, so that service is available at watch.planestv.com. But if you head to planestv.com/12 days, you'll find a route there to get half-price access to our service for the first 6 months. It gives access to nearly 300 full-length airshow programs, live broadcast special features stretching back to the early 90s, some really good nostalgia. It has all of our programs released over the last 10 years, hundreds of hours of aviation entertainment to while away the winter evenings. So that link again, planestv.com/12 days. And dare say I've popped it up on screen if I've done half my job right. And yeah, hopefully it's an enjoyable service that you can enjoy over the next 6 months. I hope you've enjoyed this show. Do like the Facebook page, subscribe over on YouTube, and if you've enjoyed the show, do give it a thumbs up, a share to people that might have enjoyed it, although it won't be available for much longer. This is just a live premiere of this full-length show that won't be available long term, so forgive us for that. But of course you can get on-demand access to all of our programs released over the last 10 years, and very many released over the last 30 years over on watch.planestv.com. But use the link planestv.com/12 days to get your first 6 months on the service at half price. Thanks again. See you at an air show soon. Cheerio.